when Donald Trump comes back to power, a lot of things are going to change around the world. The leftist cabal has actually defamed him. The kind of reputation that has been created around him suggests that he is extremely unpredictable. My own sense is that he is probably much better prepared during his second term. He is the typical, American you meet who is quite in your face, who is polite and yet abrasive at the same time. Also remember that a lot of the people he has picked up in the new administration are probably a lot better, a lot more experienced, and pretty bright people, even before he has come into office. Just a couple of days before he is to be sworn in, we already are hearing of the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip winding down. He will definitely be very, very well disposed towards Israel. India, of course, will have a very close relationship with the United States. In a couple of days, Donald Trump is going to become the president of the United States for the second time. And as is being expected by everybody around the world, he's really going to shake up things. At the very least, I think everybody is quite sure that there won't be a dull moment. Whether it's his tweets, whether it's his statements, some very provocative ones. He's going to keep the news cycle rolling. His remarks are going to create waves and controversies. They're going to rile a lot of people. They're going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. But in many ways, I think it's very clear that when Donald Trump comes back to power, a lot of things are going to change around the world. In the United States, certainly, but around the world, in the way international diplomacy is structured, in the way American power is being projected. A lot of remarks on Donald Trump are rather uncharitable. I think, it's the leftist cabal has actually defamed him. They've painted him out to be a felon. They've, all kinds of scurrilous things have been aired about him. So they have caused enormous reputational damage to him. But despite all of that, people who support him and people who support him don't do it blindly. They feel that he does make a very valid point. He raises the right issues. He talks about the ordinary people. He talks about American interest. And he does not cater to the small clique of left liberal elite, which is very hypocritical and which is also very self-serving. But nevertheless, the kind of reputation that has been created around him suggests that he is extremely unpredictable and that he is very erratic. Now, some erratic behavior we did see in his last term, but my own sense is that he is probably much better prepared during his second term, number one. Number two, I don't think he is unpredictable. What he is unconventional. And if that is construed to meaning unpredictable, then the problem is with those who expect that somebody like Donald Trump is going to stick to the hoary old conventions of the past. He doesn't. That's not the way he conducts diplomacy. He's far more direct. He's a lot more abrasive. And in many ways, he is the typical, American you meet who is quite in your face, who is polite and yet abrasive at the same time, who does not bat an eyelid while negotiating, who will drive a hard bargain, and Donald Trump does all of this. So in that sense, I don't think he is unpredictable. I think we all know and expect what we are going to be getting from him. And if somebody is harboring some kind of delusions about him, or illusions about him, I think they are the people who are going to be disappointed. If you look at Donald Trump in the normal course of things, I think dealing with his administration is not going to be that difficult. A lot of the people he has picked up in the new administration are probably a lot better, a lot more experienced, and pretty bright people whom he's picked up in the new administration. Unlike the last time when it seemed that he was picking up people as he went along, he hadn't thought it through. This time it thinks he's pretty much got his act together, and he is a man in a hurry. Because he doesn't get another term after this, at least insofar as American Constitution as it is right now is concerned. So this is his last term, and he probably will want to leave a certain legacy behind him of having shaken up things. Now, frankly, a lot of people call him transactional, which again, I don't think there's anything wrong in somebody being transactional. That is really the basis of all diplomacy. That's the basis of all politics in many ways. At one level, it is all transactional. All international relations are transactional. The problem with Donald Trump can be that it's not that he's transactional, but that he has a somewhat mercantilist approach in his transactionalism. Frankly, the problem with a mercantilist approach is that he looks at international economic relations, trading relations, in terms of a balanced trade. Now, balanced trade is good for textbooks, but in the real world, balanced trade does not operate really. So it is, if the United States, for example, runs a somewhat, and again, in this, China is an outlier because China indulges in predatory trade practices. It closes its own market. It does not allow access to its own market. It dumps stuff on other markets. Its pricing strategies are not clear. So there's a whole lot of problem with how the Chinese operate. Most other countries don't operate like that. And if a country probably runs a surplus with the United States, it also runs a deficit with many other countries. The same would be the case with the US also. The US, of course, can afford to continue running some deficits with all countries, in part because, or in large part because the dollar is the reserve currency. So in a sense, the US does not face the same pressures as many other countries will face in terms of running deficits. Other than his mercantilism, I don't foresee much of a problem insofar as its trade policies are concerned. That does not mean he's not going to be driving a hard bargain, and I think which is par for the course. That's the way he's going to deal with things. Even before he has come into office, just a couple of days before he is to be sworn in, we already are hearing of the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip winding down. A ceasefire agreement has been struck. We don't know how durable this ceasefire agreement is going to be. But nevertheless, I think Donald Trump has been making the point that he is not interested in wars. He has, that's his negotiating style. He has also tried to disabuse Israel to not think that he is going to put a rubber stamp to whatever Israel wants. I think he will have a mind of his own. He will have a thought process of his own. He will definitely be very, very well disposed towards Israel. He's not going to push Israel the wrong way. But I don't think he's going to give a carte blanche to Israel on many things. So I think a kind of a ceasefire agreement is being struck already. He's also made a lot of waves by talking about Canada becoming the 51st state. Of course, as a tagline, that goes well. But what Donald Trump is basically saying is that, look, if I have to give the kind of concessions I'm giving, I can give it to a state of the United States. I can't give it to another country. So if you want to become a state of the United States, you are entitled to those concessions. Now, again, this is not conventional diplomacy. This is not the language which diplomats conventionally use, but this is Donald Trump, so get used to it. He's on Canada, he's made statements. On Greenland, he's made statements. He has expressed himself in wanting to wind down the war in Europe, get some kind of an agreement in place. So a lot of that stuff has already started happening, and probably we can expect that when his administration comes into office, they're going to hit the ground running. From our perspective, I think what happens in South Asia is going to be very important. In this, of course, China technically is not South Asia, but China's shadow will loom large in whatever US policy is made towards South Asia. Now, as far as the subcontinent is concerned, we know that there are some countries which are trying to play the US against China. I don't think that game is going to be very successful, especially when it comes to countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and others. That pressure will be on them to not try and balance the US with China. And I don't know how much they will be able to resist that pressure. The China factor is also going to be important because already in the hearings, the confirmation hearings of some of the administration's key players, it's become very clear that there will be a lot of focus on countries like China, on countries like Iran, and some of the other hotspots. And all of this will have a bearing on the countries in the Indian subcontinent. The question is going to be how far will Donald Trump go on in taking China? And to that extent, the policies will therefore be calibrated when it comes to the countries in the subcontinent. India, of course, will have a very close relationship with the United States. We are already seeing even the outgoing Biden regime has taken a few steps which seems to have set the stage for the Trump administration coming in, picking up the pieces and moving forward, or picking up the baton rather, and running forward with this relationship. And that's a good thing. I think we can all look forward to it. There will be pulls and pressures on India, especially on trade and tariff issues. Some of the tariff issues, I would imagine, we have a mercantilist commerce minister even in India. Frankly, it's bitter. I think we need to wake up, smell the coffee, increase the kind of competition we have within India. We need to rationalize tariffs, and to some extent, one can understand where the Americans are coming from. But there will be other areas where there are going to be political sensitivities. Opening up markets to foreign imports is not going to be as easy. There are political repercussions. So maybe we can do it in a graded manner. But to say niet to everything that the Americans ask, I don't think that's going to be a very tenable proposition. So I think we need to work out our own game plan on how to deal with those pressures on trade and tariff issues. Perhaps we can negotiate by giving concessions in some areas and taking concessions in other areas, something which I think a transactional Trump administration would not be averse to. We could also try and balance out the strategic aspect of the relationship with the more commercial aspects of the relationship. We'll have to see how that operates. Importantly, from an Indian perspective, we don't depend upon the United States to fund our military budgets, to fund our military spending. Unlike NATO and European countries, which want to play a global role but don't want to put in the money. In India's case, we put in our own money to take care of our own interests. So to that extent, we are not dependent on the US, and in that sense, again, we can play a much more relevant role insofar as American policy making is concerned. And we are seeing some shades of that already play out insofar as the Indo-Pacific is concerned. In the case of Pakistan, there is a lot of speculation on whether Donald Trump will interfere or intervene in Pakistan to win some relief for Imran Khan, who has been kept in jail by the military junta, or the civil military junta, you can call it that. It's actually a military junta with a civilian facade. There's a puppet prime minister, a man whose party had lost the election really badly, but who has been made to win an election and has been made prime minister. And you know, his cronies who cannot win a resident welfare association election, they are in power as this ruling coalition, as the civilian facade, but all the strings are being controlled by the military. And I think there is a lot of speculation whether Donald Trump is going to put pressure on these guys to release Imran Khan. So that is at one level. At another level, there will be questions on what the policy of the Trump administration is going to be on the issue of the Taliban. There is some talk that, you know, the US has been funding the Taliban. I think a lot of it is a misunderstanding of what is happening between the US and the Taliban. But many of Donald Trump's aides have actually fought in Afghanistan, and that includes the man who's likely to become the defense secretary. It includes the national security advisor and people like the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who also has a fairly good understanding of Islamic terror groups based in the AfPak region. None of these guys are very well disposed towards Pakistan, incidentally. But they also understand the challenges of terrorism. So we'll have to see how that equation plays out. The statement which has now come from the Americans that, look, with Pakistan, we've never really, technically they're not our allies, there is no signed agreement of alliance between us, I think is a kind of a pointer on how the relationship could unfold even on the issue of terrorism. And being transactional, Donald Trump is likely to ask what's in it for him. The same would probably apply to Pakistan on China. If the Pakistanis want American markets, they also run a trade surplus with America. But if they want American markets and they want American intervention in international financial institutions, then the Trump administration could turn around and ask them, what's in it for us? What are you going to do for us? What are you bringing to the table? And it's not very clear what the Pakistanis have to offer to them, unless it's some kind of a mercenary role once again. But we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds. And then, of course, is going to be the China factor, which we have spoken about earlier. There will be some pressure on Pakistan on this China factor. On Bangladesh, I don't think the Trump administration is going to be enamored of Muhammad Yunus, the so-called Nobel Peace Laureate, who's more of a figurehead rather than actually somebody who's calling the shots. I think his own overweening ambitions to be some kind of this grand figure in Bangladesh is going to probably guide him more than the welfare of Bangladesh. But I think the kind of latitude that was given to Muhammad Yunus by the Clinton, because he was a Clinton groupie, he was very close to the left liberal mafia in the United States, which had propped him up and projected him as some kind of a world savior. I don't think the new administration is going to be particularly enamored of him. I'm also not very sure if the kind of lobbying done by the Muslim Brotherhood, the Jamaat Islami kind of characters in the United States, that lobbying is going to wash down very well with the Trump administration. Ultimately, the Trump administration will ask the Bangladeshi authorities as to what do they bring to the table. If all that Bangladesh has to offer is more bed sheets and bed linen and shirts and socks in American markets, then we'll have to wait and see whether that kind of transactionalism works out well for the Americans. So I think there will there will be some kind of checks and balances insofar as Bangladesh is concerned. And given the profile of Trump's aides, I'm not quite sure if they will take kindly to the rising tide of Islamist radicalism inside Bangladesh. There are people with terrorist links in the government. There are people who within the government or associated with this regime who have taken to espousing radical Islamist stuff inside Bangladesh. So I'm not quite sure on how far that will wash down with the new administration. And finally, on India, we've spoken about the commercial relationship and the strategic relationship, but there could be certain pulls and pressures on India as far as Iran and Russia are concerned. On Iran, to an extent, I suspect that the Americans are going to become even tougher on Iran, and that could cause some problems for us insofar as Iran is concerned. Because there are certain strategic aspects of our relationship with Iran which we wouldn't want to give up. So we'll have to see how we handle the American pressure on Iran and on Russia. In case the Trump administration was to start normalizing its relations with Russia, that would certainly create a lot of strategic space for us. But if the Trump administration doesn't soften the line on Russia, and they will have to soften the line on Russia if they really are interested in winding down the war in Ukraine. But if they don't, then we will have certain problems in moving forward with Russia insofar as the United States is concerned. So we'll have to see how we balance those pulls and pressures. Again, nothing unusual about it, part and parcel of international diplomacy. But I think one thing we can be sure of, that the next 4 years are going to be very, very interesting.